Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Man Mouth. Glad to have the crew back. I've been on the road 1,800 miles in about 8 days. Of course, Lou already told me he's got me beaten in that department. He can elaborate on it in a minute, but that probably gives you a reason why I'm wearing this King of the Road hat, knowing that Rick Curti was on that trail of that 1,800 miles in 8 days. So I'll introduce my crew when I turn it over to Lou. But before I go any further, I do want to go out there and pass on my condolences to the family of Hank Goldberg. Rest in peace, Hank Goldberg. He died on July 4th yesterday, his 82nd birthday. He's a former colleague of mine in the 1980s, and I had the opportunity to see him in 2013 covering the Florida Derby over at Gulfstream Racecourse. So you want to talk about the most colorful guys on the planet, controversial, talk about a better and a guy that knew his stuff well. Hank Goldberg was a consummate colleague and a very good friend. Rest in peace, Hank. I feel I'm a better person because I know you for sure. So, with that said, okay, I want to turn it over to my co host, Lou Landers, along with the rest of our crew. Take it away, Lou.
All right, Scott, thank you. And yes, rest in peace to your dear friend. I'm Lou Landers. I'm here with Scott, of course, Rick Curti, and Eric Katz. And we got a good show planned tonight. We're going to be talking about the MLB trade deadline. It's on August 2nd, so less than a month away now. And we're trying to see teams separate themselves from the rest of the pack. We're seeing who's a contender, who's a pretender, and really who never had a chance. Anyways, on this show, we're going to break down the needs of all the American League contenders. And of course, we should probably start with the team that has the best record in baseball right now in the New York Yankees. And I look at this Yankees team and I think rotation depth is probably important with Tyon and Severino being injury prone, Cortez Jr., innings limit. Of course, in the outfield, Joey Gallo certainly not getting it done with the bat. And Aaron Hicks has been better as of late, but he's also a weak spot in the order. And then maybe a bullpen arm for this Yankees team. It's not a major need for them. Every contender should be considering bullpen upgrades, though, as we get closer to the stretch run. So that's the basics what I got here on the Yankees. Of course, if these guys want to get into more specifics, players to target, by all means, fellas, do that. But of course, I have to go over to Eric here first, my fellow Yankees fan on this broadcast.
Yeah, well, obviously, they need. I think Gallo is clearly a liability. I think Hicks they'll end up just. I think Hicks they just end up keeping there because he's been kind of he's been turning it around as of late. It's been hitting the ball better and has actually gotten on base, so that's definitely a plus. But Gallo, I feel like the guy can't even hit water if he fell out of a boat. And obviously a bullpen arm. I think a bullpen arm wouldn't hurt just because Chad Green is out for the year. One guy, I know Scott will be familiar with this guy who I've been wanting the Yankees to trade for, who they'll probably only have to give up like maybe a mid-level prospect for him, is Anthony Bass, who's just having a fantastic year out of the Marlins bullpen, which the Marlins are probably going to look to trade him just because he is a veteran. He's 34, but still having a fantastic year. The Yankees can probably get him for not a whole lot, and so there's your bullpen arm right there.
Yeah, there's some teams that really do need bullpen arms, and then there's teams who just should get a bullpen arm because all the innings these guys eat all year, they start to wear down, and the more arms you can get going into the postseason, certainly the better for sure. Rick, your thoughts? What does this Yankees team need to maintain kind of where they're at, and more so just heading into October? Because I don't think anyone doubts they're going to be there at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a monumental collapse for them to, and I don't see that happening. They've been red hot from the beginning, playing great judges, like clearly to me the MVP. Gallo, he needs to go. I mean, he has just been completely awful. I mean, this guy's home run or strikeout he's like the Rob Deere of our modern times. Home run, low batting average, lots of strikeouts. But like every other team, I think the bullpen. They have to get someone in their bull just to strengthen it up. They don't really need much. To me, the Yankees, they've just been so red hot, so great. But it's always good to have a couple of extra arms in the bullpen.
It certainly is. And that rotation, too, because there are injuries. But I want to tell everyone, of course, subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, you can call 954-304-4941. That's 954-304-4941. Audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And back to that rotation depth for a moment. Right now, obviously, it's a great rotation. But how often does a team starting five actually last the whole year without any sort of even minor injuries? And right now, that's what the Yankees have basically been dealing with. But again, Tyon and Severino are injury prone. Cortez Jr. on an innings limit. Do you believe this to be a need for the Yankees, Scott, to go out there and get another arm, or do you think they can rely on prospects like Clark Schmidt, Domingo Germán is coming back? Do they have enough depth in their farm system to, I guess, deal with what could be a potential injury down the line? And if that's not the biggest need, I think we can all agree that another bat in the outfield to replace Joey Gallo is definitely necessary.
Well, I think that's a great question. Now, it depends on what Steinbrenner you're looking for. George Steinbrenner would go out there and trade for one, whereas his son, on the other hand, would bring one up from the farm system. So I think they could probably go with an internal possibility.
Well, that's one of the issues Yankees fans are having right now, though, is they're not doing either. They have Miguel Andujar just sitting there ripping apart AAA pitching, and they bring him up for the doubleheader and they send him back down. Estevan Florial, who they've had in the organization for like 8 years now, batting over 300, plays a great defense, steals bases, can even play center field so they can eventually move Judge back into right field, because I'm still scared with Judge in center field, despite him being great there. So they're not promoting guys from the minors, and they're not making a trade. They keep trotting Joey Gallo out there, who's a decent glove, but he's not like an incredible defensive player. I mean, I'd rather have a guy hit 3 home runs all season, but bat even 250, put the ball in play, than Gallo and his 8 or 9 home runs and his 160 average. I think one for his last like 65 or something. It's just, it's dreadful. You can get by against bad teams, but you saw when they played teams like Tampa and Houston, who are 2 of the best run prevention teams in the league, teams struggled offensively here and there. So if you can get another contact first bat in there, or someone who could do more than Gallo, it's going to help when it comes to facing the top teams in baseball.
But Lou, I should preface the word yet. Okay, we're still talking what, July 6th right now. So the word yet is a very key word. I think that what you're talking about is tremendously accurate. Okay, I think that Andujar is going to get there eventually. That's a matter of time. It really is. So,
or traded for that said player to replace Gallo.
Right. Yeah, that's an inevitability. Okay, remember, baseball's a marathon, not a sprint. We all know that. So I'm with you 100%. Really, Lou, I am. In terms of an arm, you never know. Maybe Eric is right. Maybe the Marlins will part with one of their arms. They've certainly been known to trade some players at the deadline. The Detroit Tigers might even pull one out with Michael Fulmer could be out there as well, because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year as well. And he's a bullpen arm. You never know what the haul is. Al Avila is under a tremendous amount of pressure in Detroit because they certainly expected a much better season than they've gotten. So there's a lot of other arms that are out there, which I'm sure over the next several weeks we're going to be able to bring out. So Andujar is a matter of time. It really is. I think the one thing I want to make very clear tonight is I have a strong feeling that we're looking at a potential Subway Series here. And I know we'll talk about the National League next week. I want to get ahead of myself. But I've been interacting with one of my Twitter followers, Tony Martin, who believes that, hey, the Subway Series would be great. Steve Cohen's holding up his end of the bargain. There'd be a lot of money for the metropolitan New York area, as well as packed houses, and that the public is due for a Subway Series. And the network's
that's possible if DeGrom and Scherzer are both back and both healthy and pitching at the right time. Certainly, we'll get to the NL, as you mentioned. I will say this. Rotation pieces can be harder to come by. I find the bullpen pieces are the easiest to find at the trade deadline, because even the bad teams in baseball do have 1 or 2 solid arms in the bullpen that they're willing to trade because they're looking to the future. So bullpen arms are usually the pieces that are moved the most and the most often, and typically for the least, because you're going to look at every single one of these teams we're going to talk about here tonight. Even the teams that don't need a bullpen piece should go out and get a bullpen piece.
Well, again, the X factor here, though, on the Mets, and I know we'll talk about next week, because I've been saying it all year. You guys know it. Buck Showalter and Aaron Boone. It'll be a pretty interesting matchup if it happens. But you're right, bullpen. But here, I'm going to hit you guys with a hypothetical question, okay? When you talk about bullpen, okay, one of the guys I've always liked was Dennis Eckersley and John Smoltz, guys that go 2 or 3 innings. When you value what a bullpen is these days.
Not going to happen now.
No, that's true, 100%. So do you value a bullpen in such a way where you have a 1 inning guy, where you're right, you can get him a lot cheaper because your production is going to be a lot different with a 1 inning guy versus 2 or 3. And that's a hypothetical question we want all of our listeners and fans to go out there and realize. But you're right. I mean, all the contenders that you're about to mention are all going to be in the same predicament. Bullpen cheap help can come cheap. It just depends on when you trade for these pieces. So go ahead.
Yes, but there's teams like this next team that actually really need it, and that's the Boston Red Sox. And there's a number of things the Red Sox could use as improvements. I would say first base, because Dahlbeck, Franchi Cordero, not the answer. They need something a little more steady. You look at the Red Sox lineup, it's great in the middle, great big boppers there, but they don't have a balanced lineup at the bottom of their order. That's an issue. Rotation depth could be important for them. Evaldi and Sale could be back, and sure, those guys could be that rotation depth, but they're going to be injury prone. I'm not sure Sale comes back and is great. Evaldi's had injury issues in the past as well. Pivetta and Walker having kind of career years. Anything could happen to them. They need rotation depth, but the biggest thing for the Red Sox is the bullpen. The biggest need for them, probably the biggest need in the bullpen in the entire American League, is the Boston Red Sox. They've kind of figured out the end of the games with Houck and Schreiber, but it's a mess just trying to get to those guys with a lead. They should be looking to add not one, not two, but maybe even 3 pieces if they want to make a deep run into October, because what they have right now is not going to get it done against the top teams in baseball. And that's when you have to face those teams is, of course, in October. Rick, what do you think the Red Sox need here? Bullpen, I don't think anyone can question, but do you think rotation depth is helpful? Can they go out there and address their first base problem? They do have a kid named Tristan Casas sitting in the minors, really good young player, but is that enough?
No, they need some more help. They don't have enough balance. Like you said, they have big boppers there, but at the end, there's nothing there. They just don't have that balance. It's just yin or yang with them. They definitely need help with their bullpen. They need 3, like you said, and they should bring up these guys. I mean, you have these guys who are going to be these superstars. It's just like the Yankees. They should bring up that hot prospect that they have up there, and he's just sitting out there doing great. Call him up. Because you got a liability there with, so. The Red Sox, they need help. They do need first base. They need some more pitching in that rotation because ain't going to get it done. They're not going to go that far, especially with going against the Yankees and Blue Jays. So they definitely need help in those areas.
Yeah, and they're a good team, and they're getting good starting pitching, surprisingly. And they're going to score a lot of runs most nights just with the middle of that order. But we're not talking about what they can do in July and August and September.
It's about when it comes in, the big thing.
Yeah. And they're going to need to be able to pitch in the middle innings. That's the key. Between the 5th and the 8th is a really big issue right now for the Boston Red Sox. And I think that has to be addressed, but they could use other things. What do you think, Eric?
Well, number one, they got to get bullpen help. They were just desperate for it going into the season. For some reason, Jim Bloom decided to ignore it and say, oh, I like the guys I got now. And then obviously, obviously that didn't work. They had a guy in the pen who would have been great, but they decided to make Garrett Whitlock a starter, and then Whitlock got hurt. But here's the thing: they need bullpen help. I mean, yeah, they could probably use another bat, but they got a nice system going right now. Where when the rosters expand, it's going to be time to start seeing these guys, which. I think that bullpen help should be number one. I mean, their bullpen has been a complete disaster all year. They finally started to figure out the end with Tanner Houck. But keep in mind, though, when you go to Toronto, and I don't, get Toronto's rules. I mean, I'll let everyone else form their own opinion on this. Toronto's rules state you have to be vaccinated in order to even put your pinky toe in the country. Tanner Houck is not vaccinated. So that caused them all sorts of problems in Toronto. They need that bullpen help. I mean, the bats, they could probably get by with what they have now, especially with their big boppers. But they need that pitching help. I mean, obviously their starting rotation is, been a little injury prone, but
it's getting by for now. But we'll see what happens this coming weekend when they play.
You can only do so much with what you can only do so much at the trading deadline. Unless you decide to make a flurry of moves now, which I don't anticipate them doing. But their bullpen is thin. Heck, they even got beat by a weak-hitting Chicago Cubs team.
Yeah, 2 out of 3, I think it was, right?
Yes.
And they were late in the game, and that's the issue. We know they're going to score runs, and their starting pitchers are giving them a chance to win every night. But late in the game, they are struggling. Scott, Boston, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they are flip-flopping with the Jays back and forth between second and third in the division,
Yes.
seemingly every night. But we're not talking about the division right now, because unless someone gets that lead down to 4 or 5 games or something, I think we could just look at the 3 wild card spots in the American League. They're safely in one currently, but if they don't address that pitching, and they have to face the Yankees and the Jays and the Rays over the next couple of months, Baltimore no slouch anymore. They need, like, we're going to beat dead horse here. They need more arms in that bullpen, not just arms that can actually get outs and throw strikes.
Well, the amazing part about it is we're having a discussion with the Red Sox doing pretty well, but once upon a time, we all wrote them off for dead earlier in the year thinking, oh, my goodness, they're going all the way to the bottom of the basement. But all of a sudden, they've put together a pretty good string where they're relevant. So I think the one thing that we know that they need bullpen help, but the question is when Chris Sale comes back, will he be a good contribution or not? That to me is a big question.
He's an upgrade over some of the guys they're using in their rotation right now.
Well, exactly.
Even for Sale is 70% is an upgrade.
That's my
Here's
point.
Here's the deal with Sale, though.
Baldy too, by the way.
Yep. I mean, here's the deal with Sale, though. Sale is not good against the Yankees. He's pretty good against everyone else, but he has never been good against the Yankees for some reason. The Yankees always hit him hard. I mean, having Sale back will at least help, but and we can say, oh, they need some upgrades in the bats, what they do. But to be honest, you can't fill it all during one trading deadline.
Well, that's true. But here's the point, Eric. Okay. First of all, we know that they need bullpen help. I can't believe we're even talking about the Red Sox being relevant because of how they started. Thankfully, baseball's 160 games.
They just beat up on a bunch of bad teams. That's why they're in the position.
Well, call it what, but they're still in it. So you can say whatever you want. I mean, let's face it.
And if they make some improvements, they can compete with anybody.
That's true. Exactly. So, Chris Sale, all right, we're going to call him the modern day version of Pedro Martinez, who is my daddy. I don't even know. You tell me. I mean, the Yankees are my daddy. Well,
Evaldi's awesome against the Yankees, though.
Well, right.
So you have one guy that stinks versus the Yankees, one guy that's great. But in general, they'll help that rotation now. And you know what? Maybe even the Red Sox use one of those guys in the bullpen. They just did call up Brian Bello to start tomorrow. He's one of their top pitching prospects, so he's going to go into the rotation. Maybe to keep Evaldi or Sale kind of healthier and work them back in slowly, one of them goes to the bullpen and addresses that a little bit. But that doesn't mean they don't need to go out there and get an arm or two. And it can be done, honestly, in one trade. You go look at the Arizona Diamondbacks. They have some veteran pitchers out there with Melanson and Ian Kennedy, who aren't great pitchers, but they've been there, done that, experienced guys, so they could get in one trade and throw them into the 6th, 7th inning roles, and suddenly they have guys they can rely upon more.
But Melanson can close too.
The one thing we tend to forget to mention lots of times in the baseball business is this: you can go out there, find whatever you want, trade deadline, depending on what prospects you're going to get. Once upon a time, John Smoltz was traded for Doyle Alexander. We all know how that turned out. Not very good if you're in Motown, but it's not uncommon, okay, for you to have an excess of starters, move some of these guys to the bullpen, and then you're able to continue to work things out internally, or you look for that viable option that makes a difference down the road. So, there's a lot of different options inside and outside of the trade deadline. And I think that, what are we looking at? July 5th right now, obviously, right after that. So we still have a lot of time. I'm glad we're bringing it up, though, Lou, because it's certainly something that we have to talk about, because these are the teams that are certainly contending in the American League. So, yeah, as far but to answer
not contending against each other in the standings, but also contending against each other for some of the same pieces at the trade deadline too, which is that much more interesting, and will probably raise the prices for some of these teams. But let's move over to another team in the Toronto Blue Jays. The Jays lineup is one of the best around. I think adding to it would be redundant at this point. They need to use their resources elsewhere. They lack on the mound. The back end of their rotation cannot be trusted. Their bullpen, aside from closer Jordan Romano, is pretty damn terrible as well. Probably better than Boston's, but that's not saying a lot. They can get away with their pitching against bad teams, but they play against the best teams in baseball in their own division. And they're going to have a tough schedule down the stretch. And because of that, they're going to need reinforcements. The bullpen, they're going to struggle to beat good teams with any consistency with that bullpen. Very similar issues to the Boston Red Sox, just a little stronger in all of those departments. And of course, what they don't have is the experience of the Boston Red Sox and the winning pedigree of the Boston Red Sox. Eric, Toronto Blue Jays, what do they got to do?
They need starters. I mean, you lose Ryu, which that's a problem. I think Gossman's on the DL right now, and also they're like the bullpens. I wouldn't. It's better. It's better than the Red Sox. I'll just put it that way. It's better, but they. I probably say in order to win this league, you need starters. And right now, if I'm the Blue Jays right now, I know I can outslug teams. But if I get a starter who goes in there, if I can get a starter to go deep, if they get a starter that can do that, and then obviously turn it over to Jordan Romano and maybe get themselves like a setup man, they should be okay.
Yeah, and I think all those things can be done. Certainly the bullpen arms. In terms of starting pitchers, I mean, there's going to be some decent guys out there, but I think a lot of people are looking at Luis Castillo and Frankie Montas. Montas, of course, with the A's, Castillo, of course, with the Reds. Could the Jays pull off a move from one of those guys? They have the pieces in the minors to get it done, but they also just dropped a ton of money on Jose Barrios, who's having a dreadful season. And you mentioned Gausman on the IL. Pitching is how you need to win in the postseason. We know that because even the best of lineups can be shut down by good pitching. And that's what you see in the playoffs is good pitching. So yeah, the Jays need pitching and they need it badly and arguably more in their rotation than that of the Red Sox, less in the bullpen than that of the Boston Red Sox. Scott, Toronto Blue Jays, certainly contenders, not as they currently stand though.
Yeah, but you know what? I've said it in past shows and I'll reiterate my position here. Okay. Losing Robbie Ray didn't help. When you lose a guy that won for you, but then you're back to the drawing board looking for another pitcher. Well, okay, let's look for somebody else. But we had somebody. I realized they only have so much money to go around. So for all these teams that let guys go during the offseason, and guess what? We're back to the drawing board. Well, you're paying for it. You'll either pay now or you'll pay later. So you know what? I'll do something with the Jays here that I don't do for many of these other topics. I'll take less airtime because I'll say, I told you so. You shouldn't have let Robbie Ray go. And good luck finding somebody else. And somebody else can take it from here.
I will say one thing before I go over to Rick. Losing Robbie Ray was tough. Robbie Ray has not been that same pitcher this year, was never that same pitcher prior to this year. And Kevin Gausman, who they brought in to replace Robbie Ray, has been just as good, if not better at times. So that's not the issue. It's the rest of their rotation and that bullpen. Rick, your thoughts on the Jays?
Yeah, they need to get some pitching. They need to go after Montez. They need to go look at teams that are not contending, like the Reds or maybe the Marlins. Definitely the A's. They're tanking. Montez out there. They need to go get him. They do have the pieces in their minor league system. They're like the Red Sox. They're a very, very good team, but you're not gonna go very deep, and you're not gonna go to the World Series with that type of rotation. You need starting pitching. They've just been in. They've just made some blunders with some contract signings. They've had some bad injuries, but you have to, like every other team, you have to adapt to it, get some pitchers out there. And, the A's are tanking. The Reds are awful. They're going to be moving their pieces. They're going to be rebuilding. And so Montez is out there. He's a big name out there. Go get him because you desperately need him.
Yeah, they do, and they'd have him for another year of control as well, which would be interesting. And it's tough because coming into the season, I did think the Blue Jays were the favorite in the AL East. But sometimes you get so caught up in the talent on a roster that you forget that every year guys aren't always having their best seasons. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. had his best season last year, and he's still a hell of a player. And he'll probably win an MVP or two over the next few years. But to expect him and Bichette and Springer and Teoscar Hernandez and all these guys the Blue Jays have to have their best seasons all the same season like they kind of did a year ago isn't really realistic. It's not realistic at all. No teams, maybe the 98 Yankees they all had their best seasons like ever. But other than that, it just doesn't happen. And suddenly, as good as that lineup is, it's very good, but it's not the best in baseball the way it was a year ago. There's other lineups that can compete with it this year. So rather than being able to outslug everybody, they can only outslug maybe half the teams, and their pitching is finally catching up with them, which it didn't as much a year ago. Speaking of pitching and good pitching, this team is a team that doesn't really need to adjust their pitching, although they should anyways, because as I mentioned, it's always good to have more pitching. The Tampa Bay Rays, offense, and more offense is what they need. We know they can pitch. It's been their calling card for years. Great starting pitching, great bullpen openers, whatever it might be. The Rays do it well, but they don't score enough runs with any consistency. They need an outfield upgrade in the worst way, probably a DH upgrade too. Brandon Lowe is going to come back. That'll help them, but he on his own, not enough. If they want to stay in the mix for even a wild card spot in Tampa, they're going to need an injection of offense, and they're going to need it sooner rather than later. Eric, what can the Rays do to bring in more offense? We know they don't have a lot of money to spend, but they can look maybe at some guys who have expiring contracts at the end of the year so that they're not really investing that much.
I mean, we could look at like Nelson Cruz Part 2, where they bring him back. I mean, he's basically signing 1-year contracts at this point. And, you know, he did all right for him when he was last there, but I think that would be a cheap option for them. I think just finding that guy, kind of like what Willy Adames has been for the Brewers, that can give some life to the offense and give them a little bit of a spark, would be their calling card. I know the Brewers, ironically enough, took Willie from Tampa, brought him here, and he's been great ever since. And I think that getting that guy who, a cheaper option, maybe like a Nelson Cruz, or even maybe like some veteran. I'd probably say a cheap veteran where you know he's going to be productive. He's not going to be like an all-star who's just going to absolutely mash, but he'll give your offense some life and be able to at least get you to a point where you're actually in the picture. I think is their calling card, because unfortunately they are, with how the economics of baseball work, they are limited on what they can do.
Yeah, you mentioned Nelson Cruz. Another guy on that team is Josh Bell. Either one of those guys would be a huge. They become the cleanup hitter in Tampa overnight with their arrivals for sure. Scott, Tampa Bay Rays, we know they need offense. What can they do about it?
Well, first of all, Kevin Cash doesn't swing the bat. He's a heck of a manager, number one. Two, I'm sick and tired of hearing about Isaac Paredes. Okay, so there you go. That's my rant of the week. I am sick and tired of Isaac Paredes. And number two, since we have a guy named Mr. Concrete Dump, they play in the Tropicana Dump. Okay, so they need a stadium more than they need offense. And you know what? I'll say something to you listeners out there and people watching. You know what? I don't have a lot to say about this whole team, because Kevin Cash, Tropicana Dump, and Isaac Paredes, I'm at a loss for words, and you don't get that very much. Next.
Yeah, well, good for them on picking him up. He's helped them over the last couple weeks, that's for sure. Probably won't last. Even if it does, still not enough offense there in Tampa Bay. Rick Curti, do you have a name or two out there that Tampa should be trying to acquire?
They need to go after Cruz. You know how the Rays are. They don't like to spend money. And then when they get players, they just get rid of them. That's, that's this Moneyball thing.
Cruz was not happy in Tampa last year.
I know. They need something. They need to do something because their offense is putrid. We know their pitching is great. And like Scott said, their stadium sucks. But they need some offense. You just need to go the cheap way, but that's Tampa Bay's route, the cheap way. So
honestly, I'm not sure Tampa even makes the postseason if they don't address their offense.
Well, first of all, they let Jesus Aguilar go. How has he done in Miami? He could, he found a new life here with the Marlins down over at Lone Depot Park.
And they got him for next to nothing either. They basically had him for free, and they just let him walk. Again, Paredes has worked out, but Austin Meadows was a great player for them. Even though he's had his issues with Detroit this year, that was a big loss. Obviously, Margot going down doesn't help. They were without Wander Franco for a while. They are still without Brandon Lowe. So this is a team that can't afford to have injuries the way the other teams can, because they don't have the financial resources necessarily. But everyone deals with injuries, and if they don't address their situation, they're going to be in trouble, because there are more than enough teams with weaker schedules down the stretch that can come steal that last wild card spot. Anything else here, guys?
For that matter, you might as well bring in Hernan Perez. He can't do any worse anyway. So, I mean, we got a Milwaukee Brewers / Detroit Tiger out here. So, yeah, bring in Hernan Perez. You can't do a whole lot worse than what you got out there already. Yeah, okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, bring on.
I think Josh Bell wouldn't be bad. I mean, he's probably more than likely going to be available on the Nationals end of things, and you wouldn't be giving up a whole lot for him. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much of a spark plug he'll provide, but he might bring. I think he'll bring some pop to that lineup.
Yeah, switch hitter, middle of the order, definitely.
Maybe get Gallo.
Yeah, right.
Curti can have-
Maybe
You know
change
what,
the
though?
scenery.
The
will
way
help.
the Rays do things with players, they can get Gallo and he'll hit 350 with 25 homers. the rest
he'll
of the
be
way.
great. He'll be like the Sada of Florida. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, they definitely need
All
some
right,
offense, though, fellas. We'll move things out of the East into the Central, starting with the Minnesota Twins. And you look at this team, statistically speaking, both offense and pitching wise, Twins are top 8 to 12 team in basically every major category. It's a bit skewed because the overall division is quite weak. Cleveland playing well, though. White Sox right there and have yet to really make their move. So if the Twins stand pat, they're probably going to be in trouble. Adding a bullpen arm, very important. I mean, Emilio Pagan's not going to get it done out there. Sorry, guys. Adding a veteran starting pitcher, also a must. But I think outfield or first base help would be important for the Twins too. Might mean selling some of their young MLB talent, though. And they're a small market team. They might not be willing to do that. Rick, Minnesota Twins, are they a playoff caliber team as it stands? And if they don't do anything, do they have any chance?
They're not a playoff team, and even if they do get into playoffs, they'll get swept. They're a nice story. It's a weak division. I like the Guardians, but the Twins, they've done better than I thought they would do, but they're definitely not a playoff team. And if they do get in there, they'll get swept badly. I just don't see it.
When was the last time they won a playoff game again? Wasn't like 25 years ago or something?
2002, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eric,
it's been
were
a
you
while.
alive then?
Yes,
Were you
I
alive
was.
then, Eric?
Second grade.
Okay. I just want to make sure I got the age part.
I still remember Kirby Puckett, Ken Herbeck, and Dan Gladden, and Gene Larkin.
I remember
Yeah.
Johan, Jock Jones, Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau. They had a heck of a lineup. Just couldn't.
Torrey
they were
Hunter.
great.
Torrey
I
Hunter
remember-
was a stud, man, when
They
he
were
was with the
great.
Twins.
I remember
I
Torrey.
remember Calvin Griffith, the owner of the Minnesota Twins. I sat next to him in 1987 when the Tigers lost to the Twins in that 5th game. And I can tell you a real quick story behind that, guys. I have to tell it to you. I'll never forget. I'm buying a ticket out there. I had my money taken away. Some guy didn't deliver. I ran across one of my uncles / friend that I worked at the Highland House. He gave me a little bit of money because I got burned, and I ended up buying the ticket. Sat next to Calvin Griffith and wrote a story on it. Memorized everything he said by head, and sent it to the Twins. And he got a thank you note for Calvin Griffith. So
Nice.
there's a little story about the Minnesota Twins. So take it for whatever it's worth, Twins fans.
Well,
All
here's
right.
here's the deal with the Twins. I think adding a closer will be helpful. Obviously, their by far their best reliever, Joe Smith, is on the DL right now. And
Duran has nasty stuff too, but he's inconsistent.
but yeah, I'd probably say, just go after a closer. I think hitting wise, you're fine. I think that lineup's very well balanced. I think getting I'd probably say just go after a closer. So that will definitely help. And getting Joe Smith back will definitely help. But, obviously, you need, they need to get that. They need a closer. And I think you're going to find plenty of teams out there willing to deal that. So they should have no problem with that. Will they advance in the playoffs? Probably not. But I think, but playoff wise, just considering how weak the Central is, I don't think the White Sox will make it. I think they're going to severely underperform. And we all know Tony La Russa is the problem there. And
The luckiest team in the American League playoffs, though, would be the team to match up with the Twins in the first round.
I think the only team I'd be concerned about for them would be Cleveland. I think because Cleveland obviously.
Yeah, I'm not willing to count the White Sox out yet at all. At all, they are so far underachieved in just 4 games out still.
I mean, the rule of 7 is you stay 7 out. You stay 7 out. You're still in the hunt.
Yeah. Cleveland's a good team, though, too. Guys, anyone else here have anything to say on the Twins before?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to confer. I'm going to go along with Rick. Okay, they can get in the playoffs in that division. It is a weak division. They just better hope they don't go against the Yankees, which has been their Achilles heel. But I think
that wouldn't happen in the first round if the Yankees get a bye.
No, but they're going to. Well, that's true. If they get a bye. Yeah. No, that's true. But I'll stick to my position here that if they do get in, okay, it's because of the division, and they'll be out really, very quickly. So I don't think they're deep enough to go that far.
The only team in the Central that could advance in the playoffs, potentially, if they're lucky, would be the Chicago White Sox. And you look at this White Sox team, they need better starting pitching. Some of that comes with the players they actually currently have, though. Those guys need to pitch better. They have a good bullpen as it is, but as I said with the Yankees and even the Rays, never hurts to add that bullpen depth. And then the offense, you look at it on paper, it should be elite, but it hasn't been. They could use outfield help. Overall, what they really need, though, Eloy Jimenez needs to come back, be healthy, produce. And really what the White Sox need is their current roster to actually play to its potential. You can make some moves here to improve if you're the White Sox. They could be minor moves. Their issue isn't the lack of talent. Their issue is they're not winning ball games with the roster they currently have. And they either need guys to come back and pitch better, they need guys to have good second halves, or maybe they need a new manager.
All right, so
any of those things could be a
get some
combination.
brief observations on a couple of these teams I want to turn over to you guys. Number one, Cleveland. They are what they are. I'm not overly sold on them. We'll see what happens. White Sox, no way. Tony La Russa won't see October late. I don't buy what the White Sox are doing. They had a good year last year. Don't see it this year. Cleveland, TBD. I don't know. Not totally sold on them. So I'm not really sold on anybody in that division. So take it for what it's worth. Twins, get in. Guardians, not totally sold on. Maybe, depending on who else is there. White Sox, no way. They'll be king of the road. Fair enough.
We should make a friendly wager. I think the White Sox still win this division, but that's because I think they're the most talented team, and at some point they will pull things together.
I'm
Rick
not
or
buying
Eric,
it.
anything on the White Sox? What they can do to improve?
Man, I mean, they are one of the biggest disappointing teams. I mean, last year I was like, wow, they're really great. And I thought, to me, Tony Rich get manager of the year last year. And this year it's been a complete opposite. And I just think that his style is kind of worn thin on these young players. They're not into that. He's old school. It's like trying to bring back Lou Piniella. If Lou Piniella came back, he wouldn't do very well as well. They're just old school managers. And that's what I like. These young guys today, spoiled and entitled. They're not going to listen to him. They don't care how many wins he has. So I think he's going to resign. I don't think they'll fire him. I think he'll just resign and go away. And, and they're going to get a new manager. And I don't see them going. I just think they're a mess right now.
I agree with you, Rick. I totally, everything you just said, ditto.
Just something off topic here a little bit before I go back to Eric to get his take on the White Sox is Pirates winning their World Series right now, taking on the Yankees for a 2-game set. Yeah. Basically all they have to play for this year, and actually winning a game 4-0. So Mark Mancini, I know you were messaging me while I was on here. I'm glad you're happy, but the difference between the Yankees and the Pirates is one will be in the playoffs and one won't. So the Pirates can even sweep this 2-game set, buddy. But
so celebrate while you can, man, because you haven't been to the playoffs in God knows how long, and much less a World Series. So unless your buddy Bob sells the team, you're going nowhere.
Yeah. But good for the Pirates. They're winning a game. It's still only the 5th inning. They could blow it quite easily. Yeah. Eric, thoughts on the White Sox?
Just a disappointment this year. I mean, I don't know what they could do at this point, just because they are such disappointment. La Russa, I do not buy into him at all. His style, I think, the players changed on him. He left St. Louis despite having the great run that he had. He left because he didn't think he wasn't relating very well to the younger players, and he thought it would change it with a new scenery in Chicago. It's the only reason he got the job was Reinsdorf realized I shouldn't have fired him because obviously we saw La Russa become very successful there. That's the only reason why he got the job, because Reinsdorf decided to step in and say, I gotta hire this guy. So I mean, on another thing, like this is not the first time Reinsdorf has tried to meddle. He almost brought back Doug Collins for round 2 with the Bulls, but didn't. But I just, at this point with them, I mean, they can add they could add another reliever or starter or whatever. But
yeah, the bullpen's like their one serious strength too.
Right. You could add like a starter probably, but I think they need a starter. But
what they need is for Giolito to pitch better, Lance Lynn to pitch better, Kopech to stay healthy. I mean, they really just need the actual current players to do well.
They just are not bought into La Russa. It's clearly obvious. I'm surprised the Sox. I'm surprised, when we get into the second half of the year, it wouldn't shock me if the White Sox even thought about firing him mid-year. Not that they would, but most teams would, just because Reinsdorf is not a guy to really fire people unless your name is Vinny Del Negro. But yeah, I think he'll let him. I think La Russa will resign, realizing that
he won't be back next year unless they miraculously go to the playoffs and win a World Series.
La Russa, look, here's the thing with Reinsdorf. Reinsdorf let Jerry Krause stay till the bitter end in Chicago, and eventually he let him walk out the door on his own. And he also let Phil Jackson. He didn't actually fire Phil. He just let Phil leave. And then this is not a first time for him. And he could have fired Gar Pax at the Bulls, but instead he let them walk out the door unscathed. Actually, he loves Pax so much, he kept him on as a senior advisor. But I think La Russa will be gone. I mean, I think the White Sox need a new voice because La Russa's time has really passed. I mean, there's a reason Pinella's not back, because despite all the success Pinella had with the Cubs, and at least getting them back to the playoffs, at least get him back to that point. There's a reason he's not managing anymore. It'd be a mistake if he came back, because the new managers are younger and more player coach friendly. I mean, this is not the type of era where your coach could put the kid in the middle of a basketball court and throw basketballs at him to try and catch the ball.
Well, first of all, I should point out this about Tony La Russa. Number one, okay, his plaque in the Baseball Hall of Fame is going to be the same number. So if he's piling up wins, they're not changing that plaque over at Cooperstown. So Tony, Cooperstown doesn't change plaques. Those numbers apply for when you were retired, when you were elected, and when you were enshrined. So the only thing changing with Tony La Russa may be the win totals in the record books, but there's no hard work that will be changing in upstate New York. Continue your thought, Eric. Just want to make sure I got that.
I just think that, La Russa overall, I don't think he should have came back. I didn't like the hire just because I felt like La Russa had been gone too long. The game has clearly changed on him. The players are no longer, these young kids these young kids don't know anything about hard work really. And and I just think that La Russa is I just think that his era has passed. I mean, I loved La Russa when he managed. I liked him when he was with the Cardinals, and his teams were always competitive every year, and they went to the playoffs a lot of the time. But in Chicago, these kids, they just aren't from that era. I mean, the baseball has changed on him, and that's just
Dusty Baker, on the other hand, is a guy that was always beloved by his players, and that's why I think he can still manage, even though he's way past like the age that you would expect a guy to still relate to players.
He's respected.
The difference between Baker and La Russa is this: Baker's always been a player's coach, so those guys can go through any era. I mean, I think arguably he's a player's coach to a fault.
Yeah. Also, one of them's a really nice, likable guy, and the other one's kind of a drunken ass.
La Russa, the thing about La Russa is he has his favorites. He loved Mark McGwire, and he liked Jose Canseco. He loved Dave Stewart, and he has his guys that he likes, and he definitely loves Albert Pujols. But he has his favorites. He doesn't like everybody. Baker likes everybody. He treats them all the same. La Russa, he kind of treats everybody differently, and that's the difference between the two, and that's why Baker has made it this long, where he's been able, as a player's coach, that will go well in any era. I mean, Baker's always been that guy where if I talk to him, it'd be like I'm talking to grandpa.
Well, let me tell you this. Okay, you're going to talk about Tony La Russa. How quickly did he fire Kirk Gibson when he was the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks? Don't think that home run that Gibson laid up with the Dodgers over Oakland didn't manifest into it. And of course, he let Trammell finish 1 or 2 years as an interim guy. So don't think he doesn't wear it on his sleeve a little in the back of his mind. But yeah, you're right. He does play favorites for sure. So
I can't really blame Mo. That's Eck's fault, because Eck decided to hang the fastball to
Yeah, but you're missing the point, Eric. The point is Tony La Russa, regardless of whose fault it is.
If he liked him, he would have still had his job. I think
but we don't know a little real truth about Tony La Russa. Don't think that for some reason or another that if there was a reason to let Gibson go and a reason to hold a grudge, okay, he didn't waste any time when he was the executive for the Diamondbacks to let both of those two guys go, especially Gibson. We'll never know, okay, any more about that than we'll know who shot John F. Kennedy. Don't get me started on that. We won't do that. All I can tell you is Tony La Russa probably didn't like Gibson. And you know where Kirk Gibson is? Broadcasting Detroit Tiger baseball games and not managing the Diamondbacks. And again, La Russa's not there either.
Well, speaking of the Detroit Tigers, they won't be mentioned here tonight because they're not contending. But Cleveland Guardians are. And they're kind of like the Rays of the AL Central. They don't spend money, but they keep churning out this fantastic pitching time and time again. They lack offensively. They have a better lineup than a team like the Rays, in my opinion. And they are also in a much easier division than the Rays. But come October, when it's not divisional baseball anymore, they do not have enough offense. You saw them against the Yankees and the Red Sox just in the last month or so. They just couldn't pan out. They just couldn't play up to those teams. And they're in need of outfield help. They need a catcher upgrade offensively in the worst way. They could even, if they really want to get cute with it, move Franmil Reyes to the outfield, which I don't advise. He's not that good of a defensive outfielder, but that would open up a DH spot for them. So they are a team that definitely needs to look at adding some offense. And they're a team, much like the Rays, as I mentioned, that have the prospects to do it, but don't have a lot of financial resources to get it done. But they have the pitching, unlike a lot of the other teams in their division, like a lot of other teams in Major League Baseball, and that always would give them a chance to compete. Rick, Cleveland Guardians, what can they do to get into the postseason?
Well, just like you said, their pitching has always been great. It's just the offense is not as good. I have them winning that division, but it's not a strong division. But I have them winning it. But they just don't have enough. They'll get swept right away. But they're a good team. They're a nice blue-collar team. They do remind me of the Rays a lot. Just great pitching, but their offense is just anemic. So they just need to do something. They need to just pick up some cheaply.
Rick, because unlike the Rays, they have some really good hitters. I mean, Jose Ramirez is a stud.
Yeah.
Josh Naylor finally coming into his own, having a nice year. Franmil Reyes, when he's healthy, is a great power hitter. Jimenez and Rosario, who they both got in the Lindor trade, are having good. Like, they have a decent lineup, but they just don't have that star power outside of Ramirez, and that's what's hurting them, or the consistency.
It's just not enough. I mean, there's just no way there's no way they can compete with the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees will demolish them in the playoffs.
The Red Sox and Yankees both beat them up bad, and I can't remember how they fared against the Jays or the Rays, or if they.
I think the Jays will beat them too.
I think
all those teams.
The Jays will maul them.
Yeah.
I mean,
all
the
those
Yankees.
teams
I was there. I was there when the Yankees just shell-shacked them 10-4.
Yeah, they. I think in the doubleheader the teams played over the weekend. In the doubleheader, I think the Yankees outscored them like 19-5 or something.
Yeah,
or like 19-7 or something. Like
it was
just a joke. Yeah, and that's just one team. So I mean, they can get by currently versus the White Sox and Twins and Royals and Tigers, but it ain't going to happen if they don't add to that offense come playoff time. If they can even get there, of course.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about the Cleveland Guardians, as long as you got Terry Francona as a manager, they got a puncher's chance, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and pitching, and a good manager, certainly.
Yeah, well, Terry
Francona is great.
How to handle a pitching staff. As long as you have, I'll say what I said again.
Move over to the AL West after Scott talks about his manager friend.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Hey, listen, once upon a time, I actually wrote a story on Terry Francona when he was in Pompano Beach. But I'll get back to what I said. As long as you got Terry Francona as a manager, the Guardians have a puncher's chance. Go ahead, Lou.
You got it, man. And I knew you told me about that. I don't know if you said it on a broadcast or not, but I wanted to let you talk about your boy Terry there. So at one point, it was just going to be the Astros we were going to talk about. But suddenly, here come the Seattle Mariners, folks. 1 game under 500. But they were way under, and guess what? 3.5 games behind the Tampa Bay Rays. 3 if the Rays lose tonight. Seattle is contending. Are they pretending? Maybe, but right now they are contending, and we knew coming into the season they should be contending. So we're going to talk about them. But even before we talk about the Houston Astros, they bring in Robbie Ray. They bring up George Kirby. They had already promoted Logan Gilbert last year. They bring up the best prospect in baseball, who was playing like the best prospect in baseball, and Julio Rodriguez. Winker starting to hit. The Mariners are a good team. They're not a great team. They're not going to catch the Astros. But because the fact that the Rays have to play the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Jays, and Seattle gets to play Texas, the Angels, and Oakland, Seattle's got a chance in this wild card race. And sure, they could use another pitcher. They could use another this. They could use another. They could use a whole lot of stuff. But this is a team we need to talk about here because they are once again relevant. And they didn't fire Scott Service, and he might have saved himself his job if they continue to play the way they are. The beating up on the San Diego Padres this week, who we know is a very good team in the National League, who we'll be talking about next week. Scott, I'm going to come to you first. Seattle Mariners, what can they do to get better? Because we know they're a team that should be competing, and now suddenly they are.
Well, again, this is a perfect night for me. I don't have to say a whole lot because I got you guys doing it for me. once upon a time we had Scott Service on the hot seat. Guess what? Not there no more. So continue doing what they're doing. Keep winning. Scott Service remains manager after the end of the year. That's all I've got to say. You guys take it from there.
All right, Mr. Katz, what do you got? Seattle, they could certainly use some offense. They could certainly use some starting pitching as well. The bullpen's pretty good, and they got some really good young talent there. Maybe surrounding them with another veteran could help.
I think probably another starter will work. Probably number 3, number 4 guy that they can probably get, like, especially that back end of it. But it's amazing what happens though when how Jesse Wicker went ballistic at the Angels and just started probably one of the bigger brawls of the Rob Manfred era, where they went after each other not once but twice. So it's amazing what happens where one event can just turn a season around for them. Which now they're starting to hit, and now they're starting to hit. And I think they just need that one number 3, number 4 starter, and then the AL East could be looking at some competition for the other playoff spot.
Yeah, I mean, right now as it sits, because Seattle already won today, 3.5 behind Tampa, 4 behind Toronto. Again, I think Toronto's a very good team, but Tampa has more than enough weaknesses that someone like Cleveland or Seattle could catch them.
I just think Tampa's just been beat up by injuries, unfortunately, this year. I mean, obviously with a full strength schedule, it's a full strength team. It's a different team, but I think this year is just, unfortunately, the injury bug decided to choose them this year. And so I don't think the Rays are going to just make the playoffs. And that's just, unfortunately, I think just with where they are at, and also they're in another division, they might have a chance. But in the AL East, they're just too good.
They're also used to beating up on the Yankees and Blue Jays over the past few years, and that's just not the case this year. Those teams have handled them very nicely, and it's making a difference.
I mean, we all know, CeCe Sabathia, when he was pitching for New York, would have his problems at Tropicana, but I think just this year that it's just the tables have kind of turned on the Blue Jays, especially with their injuries. This year, the Yankees and the Jays are just they're actually doing very well against them, which is why the Rays find themselves 15 games out of first place. I don't see them going to the playoffs just based on the fact they're injured. There's very little they can do at the trade deadline that will really make that will really turn a season around.
Yeah, if they were in first place in the division, it'd be a different story. I think they'd maybe be a little more aggressive, but they're not the type of team to be aggressive to begin with when they're in a good position, let alone now.
I really think they're going to just stand pat, let the season play out, basically throw it in saying, hey, this is just not our year, and then go back to the drawing board, which we all know we got to factor in the Tampa rebound.
I mean, they could be in first place this time a year from now very easily.
Yeah, we've seen them do it before. It was like after 2009, they kind of hibernated for a little bit, but next thing you know, boom, they're back in the World Series.
Yeah, and the Guardians and Mariners, two of the past 2 teams we talked about, could greatly benefit from a Rays missing the postseason. It would really open the door for one of those 2 teams, maybe even the White Sox. But there's a team in the AL West that we haven't talked about yet, and it's the Houston Astros. And they're a team that really isn't lacking anything. They have great starting pitching. They have a solid bullpen with Stanek, Neris, and Montero. Lineup loaded with talent too. Another bullpen piece would help because there is, blow up potential for a Stanek or a Neris, Montero, Presley, etc. But all those guys having very good years. Another back end rotation piece might help. But I think the biggest thing for Houston is just kind of filling in some holes that they might have in the outfield. Chas McCormick, Jake Myers, Mauricio Dubon, those guys kind of splitting some time in the outfield right now. I don't think those are the type of guys you want in your lineup come playoff time. Martin Maldonado can't hit, but he's been there for a long time as a catcher. They're not going to replace him. They don't need to, but they need to do something in the outfield, I would say. Of course, the division lead for them, very healthy. There's no real threats, even with Seattle playing better. I think just adding some depth pieces and hoping the core stays healthy is all the Astros need heading into October. A team that's been to the ALCS 5 straight years for a reason. Probably going to get there again with the way things are going. Rick, I'll start with you. What can the Astros do to help their cause that we already know they're probably finishing with the second best record in the AL, maybe even the first, and they're going to get a bye and they're going to be in the playoffs and they're going to be good? How can they be even better?
Well, I mean, they're a great team. They really don't need much. Like you said, just some patchwork. Maybe if they have a big sale of trash cans, maybe that'll help them win a World Series eventually. So that's all I got to say about the Astros. If they do win a World Series, I'm rooting for Dusty Baker. I love Dusty Baker. I don't care what team he's on. That guy deserves a World Series. And if the Astros win the World Series, it's for Dusty Baker.
The only reason why I'd be okay with them winning at some point,
Exactly.
even at the Yankees' expense, would be I'll almost stomach it because I do have much respect for Dusty B. Eric, your thoughts on the Astros? What do they need to do to maintain where they're at and go further?
They need bullpen help. I mean, we saw what happened. We saw the meltdown against the Yankees, but really I think they need the bullpen help. The Yankees exposed that they do need the help. I think they need that shutdown guy. Ryan Pressey doesn't faze me. And I think they're going to need that shutdown closer against the Yankees come the ALCS. But Ryan Pressey really doesn't faze me. He's not the type of guy where I'm shaking in the batter's box. Matter of fact, I would rather them go after a shutdown guy where he's had success against the Yankees before. And so instead of just throwing Ryan Pressey out there, who's had his problems against the Yankees, which I really think that the Astros bullpen is something that we're not talking about enough. I wouldn't call it like a severe liability. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, if you want to,
it's been pretty good this year, man. I mean, Stanek is nasty, Montero's good, Neris is good, and Presley's great against everybody but the Yankees.
Okay, you can't rely on just those 2-3 guys. You need a back end piece. I think another shutdown guy will do it for them. Obviously, their offense
maybe a lefty.
Probably.
Because all four of those guys are right-handed.
Yep. Offensively,
maybe a shutdown lefty.
Offensively, their offense is humming along. Jordan Alvarez is just a freak of nature, and there's a reason they gave him that contract now. But I think another lefty back end piece, maybe if they want to go after a closer, maybe. But other than that, I'm saying just add a shutdown just add a guy where he's going to get the job done in the pen. And the Astros should be golden come the postseason.
All right. Subscribe to South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel. Visit www.southfloridatribune.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, you can call 954-304-4941. That's 954-304-4941. Audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Scott, talk to me about the Astros and then wrap this show up.
All right. Thank you very much, Lou. Well done. First of all, let's talk about the fact that you guys haven't even mentioned Justin Verlander having a nice season for the Astros. Okay. He's doing pretty well. And again, Rick, I'll go along with what you said again. I'm rooting for Dusty Baker to do well. And Carlos Correa, everybody thought that when he left that the Astros were in deep trouble. Not the case. They're having a good year. So, yeah, I'd like to see him do well. And I think they're the biggest threat in the American League to challenge the Yankees. Like you said, Lou, Yankees 1, Astros 2. So, trash cans and all. I don't know, Rich, should we rename you instead of Mr. Opinion, Mr. Trash Cans? I don't even know anymore because we seem to be hearing a lot of that lately, but we'll leave that to be.
I don't like cheaters. I despise cheaters. That's why I don't talk about Bonds and Clemens. Don't cheat. And don't win a World Series without trash cans. I'll say something else.
Well, if they win it with Dusty Baker, we'll have to get rid of the trash can moniker.
Yeah, I love Dusty Baker. That's the only reason I'm stomaching the Astros because I'm a huge fan of Dusty Baker. I respect Dusty Baker. He's a great manager. I want to see him win a World Series worse than anyone.
Yeah,
Dusty Baker is a Hall of Fame manager, no doubt. He's won everywhere he's gone. But, man, he is just the most snake-bitten manager in baseball right now. And I would love for him to win one. I mean, he's come so close with San Francisco. He almost had it this past year with Houston, and he's obviously he probably could have in Washington, but he didn't. But I just want Dusty to win one just to cap off of what has been a Hall of Fame career.
Well, I think we can all agree on that. But getting back to my initial point, I'm glad that Justin Verlander is having a rebound year. Carlos Correa obviously left for the Minnesota Twins. And obviously, we know that Baker sentiments. All right, let me get to another couple of points while you have the opportunity. We'll do it now. Bobby Bonilla Day just took place on July 1st. And he'll get paid $1.19 million to 2035. And for all you hockey fans out there, Rick DiPietro, $1.5 million until 2029. It's safe to say those guys are in pretty good shape. All right, Rick, quick comment about Bonilla and DiPietro.
I think Bobby Bonilla's agent should be in the Hall of Fame first ballot Hall of Famer. I think the man should have his own shrine, whoever his agent was. That was brilliant what he did. And I love Steve Cohen making fun of it on Twitter, saying that his favorite day in the world was Bobby Bonilla Day. He loves Bobby Bonilla Day. Of course, he's being sarcastic. One of the worst contracts. And man's been retired for over 20 years, and he's still getting over $1 million every 4th of July. And he's going to get it till in 20. And I mean, he's set, you know.
2035, Rick. He's got a little ways to go. Rick DiPietro. Obviously, I know hockey's not your sport. Obviously, it is for Lou. $1.5 million till 2029. He's got another 7 years to collect a buck. $1.5 million. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts about hockey, Rick?
Yeah, he should be in the Hall of Fame too. I mean, anytime you get someone to a big contract like that, go to the Hall of Fame. They should both be in the Hall of Fame.
There, all right, Lou. I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. Okay, let's talk about Bobby Bonilla, Rick DiPietro. Some thoughts about those 2 contracts.
Good for them. They can continue to make that bank after their playing careers. Bobby Bonilla, I was too young to remember the entire thing and how it went down. I just know that he continues to get paid. With DiPietro, I think the Islanders signed him to some ridiculous 18 or 20-year contract or something, so they wouldn't have to pay him an insane amount of money at the time. Not only is that not working out for them now, so they still have to pay him, but a year or two after the contract, he basically got injured and barely ever played again. So that's actually worse than the Bonilla thing, in my opinion. At least Bobby Bonilla was a pretty damn good player in his day. DiPietro had 2 or 3 good seasons, maybe.
Yeah, I think he's living in Florida, so he's definitely even smarter than that. Number 1, he's living in Florida, and number 2, he's collecting another $1.19 million for 2035. So go figure. I'll get Social Security in about 2.5 years, and he'll still be in pretty good shape. All right, Eric, the youngest of the group here, and then I got a few other things I want to talk about real quickly about the 2 contracts. Eric.
Well, on the Mets end, that's what happens when you decide to trust Bernard Madoff to be your financial manager. But but obviously. Bobby Bonilla Day, it just gives me another excuse to make fun of the Mets. As a Yankee fan, we make fun of them every chance we get. Just call it how it is. They're relevant every so often. And we know that I know everybody's talking about a Subway Series. I really think the Atlanta Braves can catch up to those guys. As far as the other guy on the Islanders, well, the Islanders are essentially the Mets of the NHL. So, how does that work? 2 New York teams. One of them's not even on the New York mainland. They were on Long Island at the time.
Right.
That's just how it works. Teams and queens are just, that's just how they think. And but on the Mets end, I'm not feeling bad. That's what happens when you decide to trust Bernie Madoff to be your financial advisor.
Well, I'll say the only thing about Bobby Bonilla. More power to you. And like Rick Curti says, his agent belongs in the Hall of Fame. DiPietro, not as much, but in terms of Bobby Bonilla's agent, you should go to the Hall of Fame. Of course,
DiPietro was just DiPietro. That was just unfortunate. That was just some bad luck.
All right, bad luck, but
good luck for him.
But still, you're living the high life, not having to do a whole lot, and all that money comes into your bank account every year.
Yeah, 1.5 million is not bad. If you get 1.19 million for a longer period of time, is even better. All right, let me talk about some business that happened. I don't know how you guys spent your 4th of July, but I'll tell you how I spent mine. Last night I did play-by-play at Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium. Palm Beach Cardinals against the Jupiter Hammerheads. Cardinals won 5-1. A year ago, I was actually up in Pensacola working with Chris Garagiola, who's a grandson of Joe Garagiola, and we did some broadcasting together with the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. I did a total about 4.5 innings, 4 innings of play-by-play with Chris, and then another half inning of color commentary. And this time I was able to do all 9 innings, plus the pregame and the postgame show. Last year was pretty interesting up in Pensacola. I think they had a simulcast. I don't remember very much, but Chris was pretty good to work with. And this year was all radio, which I enjoyed, with a 1-hour preparation at the time that I didn't know much about the team of minor league baseball, with the exception of Cody Petit, who, by the way, is of the Marlins, and I'm sure you'll probably see him up there at the end of the year. Why was this such a nice July 4th? Well, number one, normally on Monday nights, I'm working with Mark Mancini for a fire-up show, so this was an perfect opportunity to do this. So I spent my 4th of July up at Roger Dean Stadium doing play-by-play radio. Another lifetime ago, I wish I'd be able to do it, but every opportunity I get to do it, I certainly took advantage of, and it was neat to hop on the headset. So I want to get to one other piece of business here before we wrap her up. Tomorrow night, I'll be off to Lone Depot Park, where the Angels will be taking on the Miami Marlins. And what's so interesting about that game? Well, guess what? Okay, Shohei Ohtani is coming to Miami. He'll be pitching. And, here's the deal. Okay, he'll be hitting as well. Candy Ebling, who couldn't get a photo pass because of severe space limitations. And I'll tell you why. Number one, when I was over in Arizona a few years ago, my buddy Tim Mead used to run the Angels. And the amount of Japanese media that covered Ohtani was unbelievable. But I'll be monitoring the attendance the next 2 days. I don't think the Marlins are going to draw anybody, but if they're getting a good crowd, let's just see if there's a pulse here to see if they'll at least be able to draw anybody to see Ohtani, a once-generation pitcher. So am I going to be more intrigued talking to Don Mattingly, watching Ohtani do double duty, or looking at the attendance in the crowd? Guess what? I get to talk about it next week and let you guys have an update. So there you have it, folks. Okay,
Maybe the Marlins will have a good week and be in our contenders conversation.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Okay, let's face the reality about the Marlins. They've been treating the Washington Nationals like the Harlem Globetrotters treat the Washington Generals. My goodness. And there's a chance, for all I know, they could be 40-40 if they beat the Angels the next 2 days, and they're 80.
Sandy Alcantara is pitching himself a hell of a game so far tonight.
He
the
always
Marlins.
did. We'll get Trevor Rogers tomorrow against Ohtani. So there you have it, folks. Play-by-play. On Monday, I get to see Ohtani, and I get to hang out with my favorite guys tonight here.
Well, all Alcantara is done, by the way, just because I love this guy. I love to give him love. 8 shutout innings, 2 hits, 10 strikeouts.
And don't forget, he's only had 2 complete games, and I saw one of them.
He's just become that modern day old school pitcher that we crave. Kind of like how he's going to be that one pitcher where you had to be there to really know how great it was. Kind of like with Gooden during the 80s.
I got to point out something interesting in the chat room right now. And, I don't need glasses here for this one, but I believe we have some comments either in Japanese or in Chinese. I'm not sure what it is. So for all you folks that are watching and listening, no, I don't need to find out what the foreign language requirement is on this whole thing. But I do know we're a worldwide show. So, hey, whatever language.
Maybe they're excited about Ohtani.
Yeah, you talked about Ohtani.
Tomorrow. Yeah.
And I mentioned Sada Arao, too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, well, that's true. Sadahara, but I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to Ohtani. And I'll tell you and the reason why Candy couldn't get in tomorrow is I love severe space restrictions when she got denied. Well, yeah, I guess I have no problem. If I talk to the Marlins PR person, I'll say, yeah, I'm not surprised at this situation because I was in Tempe Diablo Stadium. And I tell you what, there are an awful lot of Japanese media that follow. I don't know. Should I go ahead and take my digital camera one of the few times I actually have to take pictures from up in the press box and just focus in on the photo wells to see how many people were actually there? Well, I'll make sure I have it there so I'll be able to share it on social media. But,
I also want to say to our Japanese viewers, domo arigato.
Yeah.
Well, good to know. I don't even know. So whatever you said, if it's nice, not fine. If it's
Scott,
nice,
it couldn't be any worse than when Fernando Mania was happening in Los Angeles.
Well, let me tell you this. Many years ago when I was a kid, my parents used to talk double Dutch in front of my brother and I. And I didn't know if they were saying anything nice or bad, but I can tell you right now that if they didn't want us to know anything, they talked double Dutch. And my brother and I said, what? You don't need to worry about it. Okay, well, to put a long story short, okay, I'll give you my feelings about foreign language requirements. Back in 1986, okay, I took a ton of classes over at USF so I could avoid the foreign language requirement and graduated in August of 86 just to avoid the foreign language requirement. So I didn't want to be a welcome back Cotter and become a sweat hog knowing I was paying my way through college, because that's a sweat hog that would have been an expensive college education. If you guys picked that up, no worry about it. And if you did, it is what it is. But all I can tell you, we've had a great show. I know we've talked about a lot tonight about the MLB trade needs. Lou, good job putting it all together. We'll be curious to see how the National League unfolds next week. So, meanwhile, guys, you did a really good job. I know we talked about a lot of things, but I love it when we can cover an awful ground on a lot of different subjects, starting with Hank Goldberg and ending with Shohei Ohtani, a good bookend for a lot of different things that we've talked about and everything in between. So, with that said, okay, Rick, Curti, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. You can sign our petition to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram as Charlotte Bats, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti. And if you have any comments or questions, my email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
And Rick, I should point out to you that you do a great job helping us with our social media. We really appreciate that. It was great seeing you last week up in Charlotte. And more importantly, you do a good job here on the 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Sports Exchange, wherever we need you. All right, Eric Katz, Mr. Concrete Dump, take it away.
You can find me on my sports blog at bellyupsports.com, where I talk all things Wisconsin Badgers football, as well as I've thrown in some baseball in there.
All right, Lou Landers.
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Landers Talks, drroto.com. I'm content director of MLB over there, SiriusXM, Sports Byline USA, and all over, again, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, talking up tons of baseball. And of course, right here every Tuesday night, 108 Stitches Baseball Podcast.
And you do an unbelievable job, Lou. I'll tell you what, to me, every one of you guys do a great job. I'm so proud to have you as my teammates. Lou did a pretty good job going over my contact information. I'll make it short and sweet, okay? Candy Ebling does a remarkable job with www.southfloridatribune.com. At Tribune South gets it done on Twitter. And, of course, you can subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel as well. Just go to the website. You'll be able to find out the numerous podcasts that we have. And we have probably 8 or 10 of them. So go to the website. That'll pretty much give it to you everything you need to know. But meanwhile, been an unbelievable show for you guys, okay? And, of course, I always look forward to doing this and get all the fresh dialogue and the information. For those of you folks that are baseball junkies, this is the show to turn to here. And I tell you what, we have a lot of good shows, Lou Landers in the pipeline, don't we, my friend? There you go. Yes, that's a thumbs up. Nonverbal communication does work if you can see it. Otherwise, he gives up thumbs up, and that's where the verbal part of it comes in. So on behalf of Rick Curti, Lou Landers, Eric Katz, my name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. And yes, folks, I am king of the road, and these are the guys that are king of the network. Take care, everybody, and you have yourself a great week. We'll catch you next week. Wherever you're at, all over the world, we're here for you. Bye-bye now.